Good afternoon, people. Hey, I figured I'd tell you another story while I'm trying to straighten out my knife that I messed up. It must have fallen because it sure bent the point all out of shape. So it's going to take some reconfiguration on this. But anyway, see right there, it bent. I don't know how. It probably fell, like I said. Anyways, I was thinking about the last video I made, and I thought maybe I would kind of come clean on a few things in that video. Um, like how I ended up with the people that I refer to as my stepsisters and grandma and grandpa. Um, uh, my real parents and family, uh, my dad was pretty abusive, and um, he got himself into some trouble. I'm not really exactly sure the story behind it, but on week before Christmas in 1968, he loaded all our Christmas presents um, and everything into the cars. And when I say cars, my dad had and mom had matching Pontiacs. Um, and one was green with a white top, and the other was white with a green top. And anyways, he threw all his kids, which are 5 of us, and my mom, and into 2 vehicles, loaded everything they could, and it was dark out. I don't, you're a kid, you don't remember times. Well, I didn't. Anyways, I just remember it happening, and I remember being in my pajamas and being woke up and loaded into the car. I think it was uh, me and my sister and with my dad, and then it was my 2 brothers and my other sister in with my mom. And we took off from Massachusetts. Now, the reason, you get conflicting reports. You talk to your mom about it, she says it was your dad's fault. You talk to your dad about it, he said it was your mother's fault type situation. But the long story of it is we left in a rather hurry. And not sure why. But anyways, so we take off. Like I said, it was about a week before Christmas, because we had our Christmas presents. They were still wrapped. They were just in the back seat of the car, and so we took off, and we went to we hit the road, and somewhere along the line, I'm not sure where. I think it was in Tennessee. Um, for some reason, we weren't making good enough time. And you got to understand now, this is, like I said, in '68. The Pontiacs, man, I doubt if they're 3 years old. And uh, matching, you know. And anyways, somewheres in Tennessee, um, my dad traded both the cars for an old milk bus. You know, so the driving could be split between my mom and him. And like I said, we left late at night, weird circumstances. We weren't going fast enough in the Pontiacs for some reason. And so there was something going on that they never told us about. Both my parents are dead by now. Anyways, we beat feet across country. And I remember, waking up because the old milk truck where they had racks in it, so they're like bunk beds. And we had this little beagle puppy, or as a full grown, I guess. Anyways, somewhere along the line, it disappeared. Now, whether or not my parents decided to get rid of it, I don't know. But anyways, woke up one morning and the dog was gone. And like everything else, you get two different stories. Mom said this, dad said that. So, anyways, we're beating feet heading to California, and we get down to California, San Diego to be exact, and my dad gets a job as an auto mechanic at some dealership down there, car dealership. And that lasted, probably a month. I doubt if it lasted that long. And true to my dad's fashion, before he left in the middle of the night, but not before going to the dealer shop. Now, mind you, he'd been a mechanic most of his life, and he didn't bring any tools when we left Massachusetts. So we get San Diego. He gets a job as an auto mechanic, and then decides to leave for some reason. Maybe the rent was due, and he steals a whole bunch of tools out of this mechanic shop, and we head north. And I remember seeing the Golden Gate Bridge for the first time, seeing all the big redwoods, and we were going up the coast, and for some reason, I remember Mom and Dad getting in a big fight about going east. So we end up on this road, highway, and we're going across it, and the car breaks down. And the old boy that I later called Grandpa, he was a Ford guy. Some people, like Chevys, some people like Fords. Well, he was a Ford. And what he did was he had parts for the car. Because when we got to San Diego, my dad sold a milk van and bought a ranch wagon, Ford ranch wagon, 66 Ford ranch wagon. And I remember it because I love that car. I mean, as a matter of fact, years later, I actually end up getting one and really, really enjoyed it. But anyways, we break down. Grandpa, the gentleman that I learned to call Grandpa, he helps my dad out, gets him the part, gives him a place to work on it, fixes it. So Then I wake up in the morning and mom and dad and my brothers and sisters are all gone. And just me there. And so I asked, Grandpa, I said, Grandpa, what happened? And he says, well, he says, they didn't want to disturb you and they drove away. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah. He goes, I said, are they going to be back? I don't know. And it's weird how some things you just remember. You don't even know how you remember them, but you remember them. And it's probably not right. The memory of it. I probably blocked some stuff. I'm not sure. Anyways, uh, so I sit outside thinking maybe they just went up the road for gas or something. And I sit outside on the front porch and I wait. Yeah. And Grandpa comes out and gives me breakfast and talks to me a little bit and leaves it at that. And so that night, when it started getting chilly, Grandpa brought me in, gave me my own room. Said, until your parents come back, this is your room. And okay. Yeah. So the next morning I got up, sat down with the family, had breakfast, uh, went and sat out on the porch again. Anyways, happened for a couple days. About maybe 3 or 4 days into me being there, uh, Grandpa comes out and he asks me, he goes, what do you want me to do? He says, you got a couple options. You can stay here and live with us and maybe your parents come back someday, or I can take you down to the welfare department and when they find your parents, they'll get you back to them. I thought about that for a while, most of the day. The next morning during breakfast, I told Grandpa, I said, well, if I could stay here, Grandpa, I said, I'd rather stay here. Because if they left me here once, they'll do it again. So Grandpa said, okay. He says, the thing of it is if you're going to be here, you have to earn your keep. Okay, what is it? What does that mean? He goes, well, he says, I have a wrecking yard. He goes, I have a gas station. I have a dairy farm. I have a slaughterhouse and I have a garbage route. And he says, you can help me with those. Wherever we're needed that day, you come help till you learn what you need to do. So that's how it all started. So I don't know. I think, I'm not sure. I think I was, like I said, around 8 or 9 years old, I think. Um, uh, so anyways, so I started hanging out with Grandpa, and that's basically where a lot of my stories began, my adventures began, is the things that I went through. We lived in Northern California, real rural place. I mean, I think I was the only one there that was under 18 years old. Everybody else was older. So I had really nobody to play with. A few kids here and there. I end up This was in, I don't know, let's just say May or April, somewhere in there. Anyways, so then I'm learning um, uh, how to deal with all this. Um, and you know how you pick up vibes on people, you know. Uh, Grandma hated me. Um, she was just mean to me in every bit of the way. Every chance she could, she was mean. And like I said, Georgine, she was really cool. Um, she kind of was a buffer between me and Grandma. When Grandma started getting on me about something, Georgine would step in and put Grandma in her place. And the only reason why Grandma stayed with Grandpa is because he had the checkbook. And but she would he put her on an allowance. I don't know why he never just divorced her. Uh, but I never seen her be civil to him ever. Grandpa always just kind of, he wouldn't fight with her. He would just kind of disappear when the fighting came. And Janelle, um, uh, who, and see, the funny thing is, uh, Grandma doted on Janelle. I mean, that was her baby. Um, she could do no wrong. And, but Grandma, her name was Lucy. And she told me repeatedly, I'm not your grandma. You called me Lucy. Well, she was such a mean old witch that I called her grandma. You know, I mean, what are you going to do? And um, the local sheriff at the time down there, he was, Grandpa was a deputy sheriff. Um, and he was probably, I don't know, mid 50s. Grandma, she was probably late 40s. And Janelle was like 23 or 24. Georgine was like 29. And they um, they were they're all different, um, personality wise. Um, uh, and we lived in this house, and the house was like um, a 3-story old, farmhouse. Um, and the original part of the house was actually uh, hand-hewed logs built it. It was and then everything was added on. Probably over. The house was probably, I don't know, 150 years old. And you know they just built onto it. Had a big wraparound deck. Um, had a barn behind, kind of, not too close, but um, fairly close. Probably, 100 yards, maybe not even that. And uh, Grandpa, like I said, he was a Ford guy, and You did not park anything but a Ford in front of the house. You showed up, friends, relatives, whatever. Um, they had to park in the lot next door to the house and walk over across the street. Didn't matter. If it wasn't a Ford, it wasn't allowed on the property, which is kind of funny because um, I grew up just as the muscle car era was, I don't know, in its peak, in its prime, I guess you might say. And cars were um, just awesome. They're just awesome automobiles. And Grandpa had bought this 63 Galaxy 500, two-door, uh, robin egg blue. Um, and he had the gold anodized trim uh, package for it. So everything that would normally be chrome was the gold anodized. So it was a real beautiful car. Um, had the 394 barrel in it and an automatic, unfortunately. Um, and he bought that thing brand new in 1963. Um, Grandma, she Grandpa bought her I think a 68, 67 or 68 Galaxy 500. And Janelle's car, this is funny. Hers was a 63 uh, Ford Falcon, the old round fendered ones, you know, straight six automatic. She put little dingle balls in the thing. That used to be a big thing way back in the day, the Mexican scene. A lot of the Mexicans did that, decked out their cars' interiors with weird stuff, fuzz, you know, glue fuzzy hair-like stuff on the dash, you know, dingle balls hanging from the window, and just all kinds of, just little stuff. It was, I don't know. I liked it. Maybe I'm weird, but anyways, I think, don't quote me on this, but um, Grandma wanted a new car, and the Galaxy that she was driving was only a couple years old, and a big old fight ensued over that. This is, you know, fast forward, to maybe 1970, somewhere's in there, and um, so he went down and bought her a new 70 LTD, and he started driving his Galaxy, uh, her old Galaxy, and some reason or another, Janelle thought that the um, the 63 Galaxy was hers, and my birthday was coming up, and I think I was like 10 years old. And now you got to understand, we're in the middle of nowhere. I had to drive like, I don't know, almost 6 miles to the closest bus stop. And so I'd have to get up early in the morning, and drive the Galaxy down to the bus stop. And this was when it was Grandpa's car, because Grandpa would take the old pickup the old Ford pickup, uh, which was, I think, a 65. It was just before they went to the square ones. And um, he'd take that to work while I'd, take the Galaxy down, park it at the bus stop. The bus stop was the bus driver's house. Um, then I think that was, I think, I think it was like 6:15 in the morning, and had to be at school by 8. And I'd get on the bus, and we'd drive all the way to school. And I'm not mentioning any names or anything because I know how people are. They're going to want to try to fact check everything. But the fact of the matter is, uh, Janelle and Georgine are both dead. Grandma been dead for a long time. Grandpa's been dead for even longer. And um, so, anyways, so my birthday's coming up, and I've been, like I said, I've been driving the car to the bus stop forever. And it was funny, is because the dairy was kind of the closest place, and it had the gas delivered there for all the tractors, the gas and diesel delivered for all the tractors and generators and flatbed haulers and all that stuff, to feed the cows, get the grain, all that, run into town, load up on silage and whatnot, come back, dumping it so you can mix it with, the barley and molasses and alfalfa, um, um, all that to feed the cows. And I think we had the molasses delivered, um, cottonseed. Now there's a story for you right there, the cottonseed. Anyways, um, I come home from school, and Grandpa throws me the keys to the car. And you got to stop and think. Back then, things were a lot more simple, right? Um, Grandpa went to the DMV and put the car in my name, and things weren't so restrictive as they are now. I mean, it was simple times. You walked in, especially like Grandpa. He was a deputy sheriff. Everybody knew him. So he went to the DMV and he goes, "Yeah, I want to put this in my grandson's name." So he did, and I get home, and my grandpa asks me where the keys to the Galaxy are. And I told him, I said, "Well, they're hanging on the peg right there, Grandpa, right where they always go." Um, and he goes over, picks them up, and he walks them over, hands it to me, and he hands me the title to the car. He says, "That's your car now." He goes, "You're the only one allowed to drive that car." Whew. Boy, did that set off a war. There was a war between me and Janelle, Grandma and me, Janelle and Grandma against me. They hated the fact that I got that car. Um, that was my first car, 63 Galaxy 500, 390 automatic, um, which later got just got massively customized. Um, and this is a time also too where it was not a big deal to be growing marijuana as long as you didn't grow it, in your front yard. And we had Grandpa had acres of land. He grew all the corn, silage, and uh, alfalfa for the cows. And that way there you'd only have to buy certain things like the cottonseed, the molasses, and the barley, and the corn. When it come harvest time, the stuff that'd make the market, that's would go to the market. Some of it would go in the freezer, and the rest of it would be ground up for feeding the cows. And so I learned how to, you know, milk cows. I learned how to herd them. I learned how to process their milk, um, make it, pull off the heavy cream, uh, to make it a whole milk by the regulations. Um, just in case, people thought, whole milk is 100% milk. It's not. The You have to pull so much fat off it to make it whole milk. And that cream, the heavy cream, um, it would go into 5-gallon stainless steel containers, and then companies, they'd come up and they'd load up the cream every week, because we're pulling anywhere from 15 to 20 gallons of cream off a week. I mean, off a day, because you got 2 milkings morning and night. And so everything has to be pasteurized to stabilize it. And so you pasteurize it first, and then you pull the heavy cream off the pasteurized milk. So that way there you're doing both of them at the same time. Anyways, so I learned how to do all the dairy stuff. And in between, I wasn't always needed at the dairy. A lot of times I was down at the gas station just pumping gas. Somebody couldn't make it to fill in their shift. Somebody needed to be there to pump their gas. So Grandpa just told everybody I was his grandson. And so nobody got pissed off because of child labor laws. Right. But Grandpa liked to drink. And a lot of people like Grandpa. So there would be a lot of times when we'd be working at the gas station and people would show up with a bottle, and we'd sit out in front of the gas station. I wouldn't drink, but Grandpa would. And he'd get drunk as a skunk, and I'd end up closing up the station that night and, bringing Grandpa home and listen to Grandma flip out over him because he was drinking, and Grandpa would just go into his room and close the door. She'd start yelling at me for it, and Georgina would always be right there. She'd say, "Man, why are you on him? He has nothing to do with it. He has no control, blah, 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 blah." And it got to the point where one time I actually think Grandma was going to slap Georgine. And Georgine just looked her right dead in the eye and said, "Man, just do it." And Grandma pulled her horns in from then on. She didn't hardly acknowledge me from then on. I mean, she referred to me as a little bastard. And Janelle, she kind of got over being mad about the galaxy, and because when her little falcon broke down, that was kind of funny. Um, there was nobody there, and she had to be to work or someplace, and so I fixed her car for her. And so then now I had worth. Now I was worth something to her because she didn't have to have Grandpa tow the truck into the shop to have somebody fix the car. Yeah. And it kind of started working out between her and me. Um, I was more tolerated. She tolerated me a lot more. Started including me into some of her shenanigans, like I told you in the first video. Um, uh, and the funniest thing is too, um, I know I told you what, you know, Grandpa drove, Grandma drove, Janelle drove, I drove. Now I'll tell you what um, Georgine drove. I think it was a 61 or maybe 60 Harley Davidson motorcycle. That was her transportation, unless it got rainy or cold out, and then it was she'd borrow the truck from Grandpa or the car from Grandpa if whatever he didn't need. But her main mode of transportation was a Harley Davidson motorcycle. There were a lot of times when I'd get out of school and she'd run me down to the gas station or to the dairy or to the wrecking yard or wherever I was needed, or the slaughterhouse. And so I learned how to, the whole slaughterhouse thing, how to, whack them, bleed them, skin them, hang them, you know. But they have to be hung for a couple of weeks. And then usually we just split them in half, and they'd go to some meat cutting place that Grandpa always took the meat to, and he'd process it and sell it. You'd go down and buy a steak, buy a hamburger, bologna. He'd make his own bologna. And the craziest thing was, my favorite thing of the whole uh, butcher shop place was a damn olive loaf. I mean, I love that stuff. I mean, I don't know how his recipe was, but I mean, his bologna was good. It was good, thick, thick cuts. But um, that olive loaf, um, that yeah, that was that was my lunch most of the time. Uh, and then I came to the realization one day that I didn't like going to school much, because I had to get up bright and early every day, to go to school. And if I was going to be up in the morning like that, then hell, what, I could be to work at one of the places, because there's always a need for work. Somebody couldn't make it for this reason or that reason or whatever. Or if I just, I just go hang out at the gas station, or I'd go hang out at the wrecking yard. And so I stopped going to school. And Grandpa asked me about it, because he said, "Man, I noticed you ain't been going to school." I said, "I don't like school." And he goes, "Well," he goes, "we'll play it by ear." So, which I think he enjoyed a lot more than I did, but because that way there, we could, like when it come garbage route day, I mean, uh, I'd, I'd go with Grandpa on the garbage run. And it was basically a pretty big loop. In the summertime, we had to go the loop every 3 days. In the wintertime, because it was colder, we could do it once a week. And in the summertime, because of the animals, you didn't want your garbage out there spoiling. So in the summertime, we'd go 3 days a week. In the uh, um, in the winter, we'd get away with going, 1 day a week. And but that was always Saturday. That was a Saturday job, was the garbage route. Um, um, Grandpa would start drinking. We'd start about 10. We'd start picking up garbage. and we'd start about 10. And Grandpa had all these little stashes all over the place. We'd stop at these people's place, at the end of the road, right? And there'd be, a little nippy bottle Grandpa had hid there. So he'd be able to take a quick swig and we'd do the garbage. And by the time we got pretty much back to the dump to dump the garbage, um, Grandpa was he was pretty tatered. Um, so I did a lot of the driving. And, um, but the funniest thing is when usually get to the dump, see, this is when the gas prices started crunching real bad. It wasn't, I think it was 72, 73, 74, one of those years is when, the rationing started for the gas. And these people that had all these big cars, um, big Cadillacs, big Dodges, big Fords, big Chevrolets, you know, um, uh, they didn't want them no more. So what they do is they'd take them down to the dump, and generally they just put the title sign the title, and stick it underneath a rock on top of the dash. Free car. And we'd go down there to dump the garbage, and there'd be a car or two there. And since we had the wrecking yard, um, free cars, parts, so we'd go get the cars. And there were some pretty cool cars too. I mean, uh, the Pontiacs and the Buicks. One of my favorite cars I got out of it was free. It was a Buick GS, um, and it was black vinyl top and it was purple with a 4-speed transmission, 400 motor, and it was in really good shape. Northern California cars don't rust. um, so I that one into my private stash. Now, by this time here, if I got a free car from the dump and it was something that I liked, into the barn it went. So, because it wasn't out in front, so I legally park it in the barn. And uh, that car was a real fun car, and that was my first Buick. Um, um, Running the tow service for the gas station, because we had auto mechanics on duty, and that's how I learned to be an auto mechanic, was by them. And so anyways, then sometime, I guess it was almost a year before I stopped going to school, the truant officer came around, said I had to go back to school. I thought, damn. So I started going back to school. But this time here, I wasn't taking the bus. It was a 45-minute drive from my house to the school. So I just take the Galaxy. And or the Buick. I got somewhere along the line. I acquired. I did some trading too, and I got a Super B, and um, a '67 Chevelle, '69 El Camino, um, and my first 68 Riviera. I had a 63, but I don't know. I don't like that body style. I like the 68s. and the 74s and whatnot, but those weren't, they might have just came out somewheres in there. Anyways, so I drive to school, and none of the other kids had a car, even had cars. I mean, they weren't even old enough to think about a car, and uh, I didn't do stupid. I wasn't stupid with the car, I mean, I didn't do anything. It wasn't until I literally got yelled at by the vice principal for driving to school, and um, I mean, I was like, I mean, you got to understand something. Our school, it went from pretty much, from what kindergarten all the way up to um, I think 8th grade in one building, and then it went from ninth grade or ninth grade to graduation in the other building, and then you had the gymnasium. I think we only had like um, I think a 7-person football team, and our center was a girl. Um, and I'll tell you about her someday, maybe. But anyways, uh, so then he turned me into the policeman, Rex Murphy. He was a highway patrol for the area. He was a piece of work. He actually got his thingy cut off um, from a hippie chick uh, because he was trying to coerce her into playing with him, playing his little game. Anyways, that's another story for another day. But all these uh, interactions with you know certain people growing up, you know, um, there's all stories attached to those guys too. Um, and since I was, I don't know, there was a lot of kids on the bus route, and I made a few friends at school. And so when I drive to school, I would um, uh, stop and pick them up, and we'd park after I got yelled at by the vice principal. I'd park a ways away and walk to school from there. And then I'd figure out a way, like um, I'd get one of my friends to pretend to get in a fight with me so I could get suspended from school. And so I wouldn't have to go to school for a while until the truant officer came back through and said, "Hey, man, you got to go back to school." And um, anyways, so that's how kind of my dysfunctional family got together. And I don't know, maybe, I don't know what year it was, late 70s. Um, Grandpa died. And like I say, Grandma didn't like me, so she ran me out of the house. Grandpa was still laying dead in the hospital, and she was running me off the property. So I was only able to grab uh, my uh, my GS, my Buick GS, because things happened to where the Galaxy ended up getting totaled. That's another story. Um, I had quite a few cars, that I really liked, and but I couldn't take them all with me. I couldn't drive them all. So I just took the most favorite one I had, and that was the Buick GS. And I guess it was years later that I ran into Janelle, and she asked me, she goes, "Why'd you leave?" And I told her, I said, "Grandma ran me off." Yeah. And she goes, "Grandpa left you the gas station, the garage, the garbage route, and the wrecking yard." I said, "So what happened to them all?" She said, "Oh, Mom sold everything and bought herself a brand new Cadillac." And I thought, wow, some people. But anyways, that was a sad day. But anyways, it was years later that I actually ran into my mom. I ran into my sister first, and my older sister, and she brought me over to Mom's house, and she didn't tell me where we were going. And when we got there, and I recognized her right away, I was not happy with my sister. I really wasn't. I mean, she abandoned me when I needed it. And and she came up. She had the lame excuse, "Oh, your dad did it." What? And you didn't say anything? How could you? And so I never got to know her. You know, um, and which is fine with me actually, because I mean, and then hearing the stuff my sister and other siblings went through that stayed with them. I'm glad it worked out for me. I mean, I didn't have a bad, you know, kind of childhood. I mean, not like they did. I mean, from what I was told, their stuff was pretty bad. And um, I'm just, sorry that it worked out that way, but I'm just glad it didn't happen to me. And I think that kind of, with Grandpa's influence, like he did, that's carried my work ethics, along with me. Um, and now I'm retired and living in Hawaii. Uh, Life is good. I got a cute little puppy. That's a ladybug. And then I got a kitty cat. Call it Girl Cat. She's a little calico. And really deep rooted good friends. The ones I call friends are really good, deep rooted people. And everybody else is just an acquaintance. But I'm happy with my life right now. I get to feed the birds. I got my goldfish. I got my garden going. Uh, I got my own John Deere mower. I got an old beat up Chevy truck. Got my Trooper. It's my daily driver. Got lots of tools and lots of projects. Anyways, I thank you for listening. May you guys enjoy this, and God bless.